So the big tax question is this: how do wealthy people keep their money working for them when selling their business, real estate, or other highly appreciated assets without paying hundreds of thousands to millions of dollars in tax? What if we, as business and real estate owners who have poured blood, sweat, and tears to growing our wealth, and who didn't hire expensive tax attorneys and CPAs to map out an exit strategy, knew their secrets? Instead of recreating the wheel, why can't we just model the way they deferred 30 to 50% in tax, paid off debt, funded their next business dream, and most importantly, leave a financial legacy to give to the causes we believe in most? What if their secrets weren't complicated at all, and you just need a guide who is a few steps ahead of you? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. My name is Brett Swarts, and welcome to Capital Gains Tax Solutions. Welcome to the Build to Billions podcast, where we guide successful entrepreneurs and investors on their journey from millions to billions. We believe the key to scaling and compounding your wealth and life starts every single day with a practice of stewardship over ownership mindset and applying billionaire biblical principles. Our ultimate goal is to help you scale and compound your wealth and life so you can give more all of it away to help MVPs, the most vulnerable people. My name is Brett Swarts, and each and every episode we're joined by the world's top entrepreneurs, millionaires, and billionaires, where they share their secrets, insights, and wisdom with us so we can all scale and make a bigger impact. I'm excited about our next guest. He is focused like a laser on empowering strategic growth through insightful investment research. He has over 2 decades of experience, and he's built a career dedicated to empowering investors and businesses with actionable insights. He is the founder of Chorus, a boutique investment research firm. And again, he specializes in helping high net worth individuals, venture capitalists, and startups navigate complex markets and emerging industries such as AI, SaaS, and data. And he has a ton of background and experience. And we're going to be talking about basically investment research secrets and how to become a more wise and strategic investor. Please welcome to this show with me, Daniel Nikic. Daniel, how are we doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Brett.
Excellent. For our listeners getting to know you for the first time, would you give us just a little bit more about your story and your current focus?
Sure. So maybe based on the accent, some can't notice, but I'm originally from Canada, near Toronto. And after I finished university at Brock University out of St. Catharines, I moved to Croatia. The reason why I moved to Croatia was due to the fact that I had some connection with the region, since my parents are Croats from Bosnia and Herzegovina. And then I initially worked in management consulting. So I always had a background in university dealing with finance, accounting, and marketing and research. And initially I worked in management consulting, doing competitive research. And then in real estate development, I did market research, dealing with secondary and primary research tasks, and also financial modeling and some, I would say, finance management. Then in 2014, I opened my company Chorus, which stands for Coherent Research. And I use my strengths to provide market research and finance services. And I've been dealing with clients globally, from Japan all the way to the States and even back home in Canada. And I started getting interested in investment research in 2016 because I pivoted my company strategy. And it kind of deals with what I've seen with doing investment research with startups. And I focus more on providing market research, finance management, and auditing AI for investors and also their portfolio companies.
Got it. Okay, fantastic. By the way, if you want to learn more about Mr. Daniel, you can go to Daniel and then Nikic.com. That's Daniel, Nikic.com. So Daniel, let's dive right into the topic at hand, which is research and investment secrets, right? Like, so what's the number one investment research secret for a high net worth individual?
Is the market that they're in going to have a future? That's one thing I would say is a big secret. They're like, yeah, the present is great, but how's it going to be in 10 years? Hence, why did Peter Thiel invest in Facebook back in the mid 2000s? Why did certain investors such as SoftBank invest in Nvidia and et cetera? Because they saw the long-term market opportunities with these companies. And I think we see that now with, for example, what's going on with ChatGPT. Obviously, it exploded a few years ago, but the investors in it prior to it saw great potential. And I think that's what a lot of investors are focused on, but take into consideration investors can't be too patient because they need a return on their investments also.
Okay, that makes sense. Pretty simple, right? Does it have a long-term future, right? And so how do you balance that piece of it? Like, Peter Thiel, it's pretty simple, right? He can invest everything long-term, right? At
Yeah.
his point when he invested into Facebook, it wasn't something that was, 10 years ago for him didn't make much of a difference. But, and by the way, we're talking about high net worth individuals. So that between one and, let's say, 50 million or $100 million net worth. And so they also have a, big piece of wealth. But at the same time, what is that? How do you know, or what buckets do you put in short term, long term, medium term? How do you decipher which one goes into what for your wealth?
I think if for dealing with high net worth individuals, I think if they're going to invest in a later stage company, so that's a company that's already getting revenues, probably as I say, the Series A and further stage, they're going to want to return their investment probably within 3 to 5 years maximum 5. But if they're investing in a company that's pre-revenue, so they have a product that's being tested, then I believe that they're willing to wait 7 to 10 years. But if you're thinking a company is going to wait 15 or 20 years, I think that's very rare. And we saw that with a lot of these companies that are innovating markets, such as, let's just take an example for Amazon. People might say, oh, it took a long time, but in 10 years, it was worth billions. I think a lot of entrepreneurs and founders will be like, yeah, give me that deck of cards. So it also depends on the industry too, because I've analyzed many companies in healthcare, and that's a long process if you're dealing with FDA approval or CE approval if you're based in Europe and etc.
Okay, so that makes sense. Yeah. So just understanding later stage is generally 35 years, right? And then pre-revenue is 7 to 10. And then, yeah, it's tough if you're going 15 years and beyond. So the number one secret is the market that you're investing in have a future? What's the number two secret to, leveling up your wisdom as for investment research?
This is probably more interpersonal, but if you're investing in a company, can the management team deal with stress? I don't know how much I can mention this, but it is so important to deal with stress. Are they rational? Are they going to get erratic if something doesn't go their way? Because being a CEO of any company, you're dealing with a lot of stress. But if you're dealing with a startup and you're not profitable, you're thinking about your company 24/7. And can you deal with the stress in terms of leading, dealing with, let's just say, issues within the team, market changes, and getting the customers? Because I think we've all been there as entrepreneurs. Getting that first customer, it is the best feeling. It is one of the best feelings. It is like getting a home run.
Yeah, 100%. I love the way you put this, right? And I believe this is even more true due to AI and the way things are going. That conflict resolution, communication, negotiation, personal interaction is going to exponentially also be important and vital for success at the futures of companies. Because, like you said, the interpersonal issues with teams, with clients, with customers, right? Because people are going to want a more personal touch as things go to more to AI. What are your thoughts on that? Or is that kind of the same thing that you're talking about here?
Well, as things go more towards AI, I think it's going to replace a lot of jobs, but it's also going to create a lot of new jobs. Like I do auditing data for AI. That wasn't a job 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So many things have changed. And I believe we're still in the augmented AI stage, which means that we're still in a stage where AI tools still need human interaction. It can't think of itself. When we get to the general AI space, then things are changing. Then it can think for itself. Then we're thinking about like the movies I, Robot back in 2007, all those other fun movies. I think there's good things, and it depends. There could be some big changes in terms of AI too, because it's also going to make certain industries more efficient, such as healthcare. And I think everyone can agree health is number one. And just imagine if with imagery AI, it can detect some symptoms on a X-ray and prevent someone from going through a huge process of rehabilitation or preventing death.
Okay, got it. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. So number two is, can the management deal with stress? How rational or off tilt would they get when stressed and things aren't going their way? Can they acquire and get momentum with customers, right? Get that going. What's the number three secret to, having great wisdom when it comes to investment research?
I think this is probably a bit old school, but I would say look at how they deal with their money. Are they manipulating their finances? And I remember this investor I worked with, and they were quite direct person, which I like because that's how you learn the most from those type of characters. And they said, I don't understand why some startups think that this is a grant. We have shareholders too, because usually venture capital funds, or if they're high net worth individuals, they probably have to think about their trusts if they're dealing with their family trust and etc. And once you give someone money, there's no guarantee you're going to get it back. So it's also a risk. And how do they deal with the money? Are they lying about their finances? Are they thinking of spending their money that they get investment on something that isn't really going to help the company grow or be more financial fees? Let's just say, how can I say it in better words? To be more polite, more financial feasible in terms of looking more proper for further investments. Because a lot of times if you're dealing with the early stage, these investors are hoping there's going to be a follow-on investor in the next few 2 to 3 years, or if luckily within a year. But I would also say if you're dealing with someone who's a founder, they have to know their finance. Because at the end of the day, this is a money business. Everyone's interested in this company, are looking to make money out of it. And if they're going to manipulate the monies, or if they're not good with monies, how are you going to make sure that they're going to get you a return on your investments? Or you have to consider, should they have another CEO and this person should be a chief technology officer or marketing or whatever other position available.
Let's talk about manipulating the money. What are some red flags that you maybe when you're doing your investment research that you see when it comes to this point of looking at how they deal with their money?
First of all, they lie about their financial statements. I've seen some companies, they're like, oh, here's our financials. It's an Excel sheet that I could have created in grade 7. And I'm born in the 80s, so that's a long time ago. And also, I've seen one company, and I have a background in accounting, so I know journal statements and general ledger. For those who don't know, journal statements are transactions. Say if you take money out of one account, it gets recorded for another account. And this person used their immigration papers as research and development. And they're like, a lot of companies use this, and I'm being an immigrant, pretty much said that, well, I've never heard that in my life, because I think every immigrant would use that as R&D to say, like, yeah, it's R&D that got immigration papers, but I'm dealing with deep tech AI. So that was one example, and I was kind of like, and there was one person, they said they wanted to use the money to buy a patent that they sold a few years ago, which had nothing to do with the company. So sometimes certain individuals have such big egos that they kind of let it out what they're thinking. And you're like, wow.
Wait, to buy a what? Say that one. Did they buy a what? What were they going to buy?
A patent that they sold before.
Oh, a patent. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So they're going to use the money to buy a patent. Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So this is investor dollars that were coming in. And just walking through that, was the strategy to be able to then offer something more for their company by buying the patent? Like, I'm confused. Like, give me the downside of that.
They had a patent that they wanted to buy that they sold in the past for a product they have not yet developed or have not yet decided how they were to develop.
Got it.
And it wasn't totally off the grid, but it was still like, it doesn't seem right. And there was one company, I think a lot of founders and investors have to take this into consideration. This one founder, they made a loan agreement with the company. So once the company gets monies, that they will get paid back a certain amount because they weren't getting his salary and stuff. And investors like, well, that's not our problem. That's your problem.
Right.
So that's something some people might think like that's a bit harsh. Some might be like, well, that they should have thought better financially. So that's kind of a difficult situation. And I remember reviewing like the agreement, and obviously you tell the investor, because at the end of the day, the investor looks into it. You can't decide for the investor. You say, hey, this is the agreement, take into consideration. You invest 1 million. This of that 1 million, probably 300,000 is going to go to this family because they were investing in the patents and the development of this product.
Got it. So really the question is, what's the budget for the money that's going to be invested, and what's going to be the return on that investment? And as soon as you find out it's for things that aren't going to necessarily producing or potentially producing cash flow or growth of the company, you're like, well then, and especially if they're not able to sustain themselves and it's just going towards the founder. It's kind of a red flag. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's kind of goes into consideration. It's kind of a risk too, because they might be like, wow, this person has a really good product. Maybe we're getting a great valuation on this investment. For those who don't know, in terms of valuation, that's like you're investing in this company at this valuation, and they're willing to take this valuation because they want to give some money to themselves that they loaned, instead of evaluating their company at an extra 5 mil, for example. So there is always negotiation tactics that should be considered.
Okay, great.
That's what I would say for that example.
Okay, that's good. What's the number 4 secret after this one? We look at the numbers, make sure look at how they deal with their money, right? Look for any manipulation or red flags. Is there another secret too that you would say is a key one for helping to make wise investment decisions?
I would say, and this is an interesting one, if you're investing in a company, do you hate the person? Because a lot of time, I remember this investor, and they were dealing with this one company, and they're like, you know what, they have a great company, but I just don't like the person. I just don't like it. And some people will be like, oh, that's too emotional. But if you're dealing with this person on a daily basis, there's going to be some harsh feelings. And that's, I think, one thing to consider, because you're going to be dealing with a lot of stressful moments. Do you think you could deal with this person during stressful moments? Is this person going to be capable of listening to criticism? Is it positive or negative? That depends on the people in the situation. So I think that happens a lot, because I think if you look, I'm going to use sports for example. Maybe they did not like each other the most, but they did not hate each other, and there was respect. And I think respect is connected to this, is probably the most important thing. Because if you respect someone, you're being willing to do some work with them.
That's spot on. Yeah. I mean, don't overlook this piece of it, right? Can I trust the person to receive, feedback that can be negative at times, and to work through that? Do I like the person, right? I think it's the beer test, right? Like, would I want to have a beer with them? And the other one is, would I want them to watch my dog for the weekend, right? Yeah. Like, and if you hesitate on those two, you're like, maybe I can just go out and wait for the next opportunity, right? Excellent. Hey, we're running out of time. I do have part of the show. Here we have what's called Capital Gains Tax Solutions. I'm the founder of where we build capital gains tax exit plans for entrepreneurs, business owners that are exiting highly appreciated assets, and they don't have a 1031 exchange option. You're dealing in the real estate and the business arena. I'm curious, what's the biggest frustration when it comes to the 1031 exchange or lack thereof options for business owners that have massive capital gains taxes? Any strategies that you like to kind of talk about, or things that come to mind?
A lot of times they have other companies that they send invoices. So we've seen that going on. They're like, hey, you know what? Since I'm dealing with this company, it's kind of like family offices. For those who don't know, family offices are usually for high net worth individuals. And I've done probably research on over 500 family offices. And one interesting thing is they have the money circulating around. So you have one company that's investment, one could be real estate, one could be the real estate developer, one could be a shareholder in the building materials. One could be a shareholder in the real estate leasing company, and all circles around. So that's one way to do it.
So let's walk through that for a second, because you're exiting a $50 million business, and you have zero basis. You're in New York, New Jersey, California, this massive tax, let's just say $20 million, $25 million. So when you go to do that, and you have this tax bill, well, I'm not sure what you mean by that. Like, you would invoice someone else to get a loss in the same year? Is that what you mean for that amount?
I would think to look at trying to minimize your profit as much as possible in revenues. So thanks for clarifying it more in detail. What I meant, like pretty much making sure beforehand that you have it set up that you can minimize your revenues to be like, hey, this is a legal company that's going to deal with the legal fees. They're going to charge me a certain fee. This company is a part shareholder. They're out of whatever country. It could be Canada or whatever, or another state, Florida. And just pretty much connect the companies that any company that's dealing with the sale of a company you're somewhat of a shareholder, because that's what I've seen from a lot of these high net worth individuals, to make sure that the profits are minimized. They want to minimize their profits as much as possible.
Okay. Yeah. All right. That's just creative. I haven't heard of that one before. It's interesting. And we have a strategy where you can defer the capital gains taxes on the sale. And so instead of having to pay, like, say, 20 million on 50 on the exit, all 50 can go into a trust, and the trust can just pay you back slowly over time. And then you just pay tax as you receive payments. It's just it's a deferral mechanism that can help you compound. But it's cool because it works for the entrepreneur to start the next business if he wants to. You can go into, securities, you can go into real estate, you can go into Bitcoin, you can diversify it all. And we call it building a capital gains tax exit plan, but it's basically a trust with an installment sale method. If people want to learn more about that, you can go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. If you're facing a Bitcoin business or real estate exit of $1 million or greater, and you have massive capital gains tax that you want to defer and compound the wealth, that's capitalgainstaxsolutions.com. All right, that being said, you ready for the lightning round, Daniel?
Sure, let's do it.
All right, knowing what you know now, if you go back to your 20-year-old self, what's the one golden nugget? Make sure you tell yourself to do.
Work as hard as you can, because you can't get back time.
Yep, awesome. Question number 2, what's the number one book you've recommended the most in the past year?
Psychology of Money.
Excellent. Question number 3, what are you most curious about right now?
Quantum computing.
Excellent. Question number 4, number one way you're using ChatGPT?
Probably in terms of making quick summaries of research. So it's kind of taking over my job, to be very open.
Yeah. I mean, you got to ride the train and figure out another level of expertise, right? But that's interesting that you say that. Yeah, our team members are going through the same thing. I'm like, hey, become the AI expert and figure out a way to automate and delegate it to AI, and then you get level ups in the next one, right? That's the piece there. Same thing with us is content creators or founders of companies. Like, AI is changing the world. So, okay, good. Number one leadership quote or theme that you're striving to live by?
There is always a solution to every problem, unless it's death or health.
Okay, excellent. Last question. It's our kind of our passion here, build it to billions, and our kind of our thesis that if you have a stewardship mindset over ownership mindset, it tends to lead towards gratitude and abundance, right? And so I'm curious, how do you best practice a stewardship mindset every day?
I make sure that I list the main tasks I have to do and discipline. And I always have a mindset, if I don't go bed until I'm satisfied if I've completed the big problems.
Excellent. Daniel, and I'm going to pronounce it, I'm going to spell it Nikic, but Nikic, I think is how you pronounce it, right? I want to thank you for being on the show, sharing your wisdom with us. Man, you broke down how we can be better investment research. But here's the thing, like, a lot of us don't have time to do that, nor the expertise that Daniel has. And so guess what you can do? You can actually hire Daniel to help you with this, right? Strategic market analysis, investment research and due diligence, client-centered business solutions. He is a powerhouse when it comes to strategic growth through insightful investment research that can help you level up your investments. Daniel, for our listeners who want to get in touch with you, one last time, what's the best place for them to find you?
You could check out my website at www.danielnikic.com, or you can check me out on LinkedIn at Daniel Nikic. It's a pretty unique name, so it's not hard to find me.
Awesome. Thank you, Danny. Also, I thank all of our listeners for listening to another episode of the Build to Billions podcast. We're also streaming on Capital Gains Tax Solutions podcast and YouTube channel. And we're on this journey with you to scale it from millions to billions so we can give it all away to help more MVPs, the most vulnerable people. My name is Brett Swarts. I appreciate you listening or watching today. I want to encourage you to take action. If you have a large exit that's looming and you have massive capital gains tax, again, to go to capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to schedule a time to see if you can be a good fit for our services of building a capital gains tax exit plan so you can multiply your freedom and impact and compound your wealth. Thank you so much. Please share, rate, review, subscribe, and we'll talk to you again real soon. Bye now.
You have just listened to another information-packed episode of Capital Gains Tax Solutions with Brett Swarts. We hope you enjoyed today's show and found it helpful. Visit capitalgainstaxsolutions.com to access the show notes and to access more resources. Don't forget to leave a review and join us again next time.